It's not always the case that bigger transit networks are necessarily better, but sometimes the scale of a transit system can be impressive in its own right. And today we're continuing my Barcelona series with a look at such a huge network. What is in French-speaking places an RER, and much of the rest of Europe an S-train, here in Spain it's called cercanías. Well, at least if you're in a place where Spanish is the main language. That of course isn't the case in Catalonia, and Renfe's iconic suburban rail logo is replaced with a rather plain R. The magic word here is Rodalies, and with over 600 kilometers of track, whisking riders across every major Catalan urban center, it's quite a sight to see. But it's not perfect. Today, join me as we attempt to untangle what is at first glance quite a confusing mess of railways, but after 1,000 more glances, is still a confusing mess of railways. Yeah, I know. There are 21 total services. We're going to talk about every single one because I'm crazy like that. Rodalies in its current Catalonia-wide form is relatively new, being established in 2010 as the next evolution of what started out as a commuter rail network within just the greater Barcelona area. That service began in 1979 and was operated by Renfe just as it is today. Naturally, the Barcelona network is by far the largest, so we'll look at it first. Then we'll discuss how the other cities got integrated into the branding. The main station would be none other than Barcelona Sants, which is mostly known today for being the city's standard gauge high-speed rail station, but that just makes up 6 of the 14 tracks. Hint hint, I'll be publishing a high-speed rail trip report soon. The other 8 platforms are used by all sorts of regional services running on the legacy Iberian gauge network, which of course mainly includes Rodalies. From Sants heading east, some services run in a tunnel paralleling Barcelona Metro Line 1, known as the Meridiana Tunnel, with others running underneath Arago Street. As they leave the city, the lines fan out in all sorts of directions, terminating at Massanet de Massanes, Manresa, and La Tour de Carol. And if you thought that last one there sounded French, that's because it is. It's a town right on the border, whose railway station actually has 3 different track gauges: Iberian for Rodalies, standard for SNCF regional trains, and meter for the very cute Cerdanya railway. So yes, Rodalies de Catalunya is technically an international regional rail network, even though only a few trains a day go to La Tour. Back to Sants now, the services heading west are a lot less varied, with the furthest extent being to Sant Vicenç de Calders, approached from 2 different lines. There's also a quick branch to El Prat Airport, and some services terminate at the arch nemesis of our channel, L'Hospitalet de Llobregat. I didn't even have to look at the IPA to say it right this time. Finally, there's an orbital line, which in theory would be great for regional travel, but doesn't provide a transfer to every line that it crosses. And now let's look at the service patterns. I won't go over every individual service on every line, as we'd be here for hours, but just know that most Rodalies lines have lots of short turns, which means that A, the central parts of the lines have very high frequency, and B, it's uncommon to find a single train that goes from one end of the line all the way to the other. Line R1 is colored light blue, with 31 stops and 95 kilometers in length. It's the only line that uses both of Barcelona's central tunnels, technically speaking. After it leaves the Meridiana Tunnel, it briefly merges onto the north one at El Clot, and then makes a sharp turn towards the coast before it starts to head inland again and ending at Massanet. We'll skip R2 for now because it's weird. R3 is colored red, with 35 stops and total distance of 166 kilometers. Starting at L'Hospitalet, it interlines with line R1 in the city center, then runs exclusively on the line all the way to La Tour in France. It should be noted though that only 4 trains a day go that far, in a trip that takes 3.5 hours from Sants. Most trains will turn back at places like Granullas, La Garriga, and Vic. See, I'm trying, come on. R4 is orange, but not too orange that would clash with the Rodalies logo, more of a gold. Anyway, it's 143 kilometers and 40 stops are quite an interesting route that kind of looks like the Greek letter omega, and it also allows transfers to both of FGC's railways. It runs from Sant Vicenç into Barcelona via Martorell, where you can get onto the FGC Obligatoria line, It then, just like R1 and R3, runs in the Meridiana Tunnel, then winds all the way around towards the FGC Valles lines, ending at Manresa. If you'd like to learn more about the FGC lines, check out my previous video linked above. R7, colored pink, is the last line to use the Meridiana Tunnel, and is a service that almost entirely duplicates R4. The only difference is that it goes onto the orbital line to terminate at a stop serving a public university. Speaking of the orbital line, that's what the R8 uses. This 40-kilometer service, colored dark purple, runs hourly with 8 stops, and as mentioned earlier, crosses some lines without an actual transfer stop. This service is actually the newest, replacing a previous iteration of R7 that ran all the way to Martorell. While not perfect, it is still great for traveling around Barcelona without going through it. And being an orbital line, it's quite popular with freight trains, which is probably why the frequency isn't the best. So now let's finally tackle R2. If you're wondering where R5 and R6 are, those are both designations used in the FGC lines, so Rodalies can't use them. R2 currently has 3 sub-services, all in different shades of green. There's pure R2, R2 North, and R2 South. Yeah, I know. This had to be created after construction works impacted what at the time was the R10, which was a simple link from El Prat Airport to França Station. All 3 R2s use the Arago tunnel, serving the Passeig de Gràcia station that is quite a mess to navigate. The R2s are also the only lines to use double-decker trains, which is pretty neat. That's it for the lines solely in Barcelona and its surrounding area, but remember, Rodalies is a Catalonia-wide operation, and so we're looking at the services even further out. 3 more major cities in Catalonia have their own commuter lines whose codes are R, then the first letter of that city's name, then a number. And connecting everything are longer distance regional express trains that make up the numbers R11 through R17. The easiest service to understand is that of Girona, an increasingly popular vacation destination that is well connected to Barcelona by rail. The RG1 is the only commuter rail service here, which is actually a continuation of a few R1 trains a day. That's why you see RG1 gets signed all the way back in Barcelona. This service began operation in March 2014. Also, fun Girona fact, budget airlines that fly to Girona Airport say that they fly to Barcelona, which is kind of like, it's flying into Beauvais Airport but calling it Paris, or flying into Luton and calling it London. I hate when they do that. But at least there's rail connections in those cases. Girona's airport sadly doesn't have one. Also in March 2014 was the commuter rail service in the Tarragona-Reus area, which largely exists to provide additional frequency on pre-existing longer regional services. The RT1 is a shuttle service between these 2 cities, and the RT2 runs a bit further from Tarragona in both directions at around 70 kilometers in length. Well, that would be if I just blindly read the Wikipedia article. In reality, the RT2 was cut back to just 3 stops long, and the RT1 is dead. It's a little bleak out there, but it is hoped that a tram network will be built in the area, which is nice. But I don't know. Maybe don't cut your regional trains before you have something going. Are you confused yet? Because it only gets messier from here. Strap in. Lleida is the final city that has its own commuter lines beginning operations in 2015. Remember FGC? Well, they run 2 of these lines now, the shorter RL1 and the much longer RL2, which actually use totally different rolling stock to the rest of Rodalies. Since some parts of the line are not electrified, they operate diesel-electric hybrid sets of the Stadler G2W family, which look great in this orange livery. The RL3 and RL4, meanwhile, are standard Renfe lines, and once again the smaller number is a subset of the larger number. The RL4 continues so far that it connects to the edge of the Rodalies Barcelona network and even the FGC Valles line. Wait, why is the map zooming out? I didn't ask for this. We're still in Lleida, right? Oh no, please no. I guess it's time for the super long regional express lines. So just to recap, let's plot the major urban areas. Here is Barcelona, Girona, Tarragona-Reus, and Lleida. Some other important railway nodes include Tortosa, close to the border with the community of Valencia, and Figueras, which itself is very close to the French border. All of this is a straight line distance of over 250 kilometers, and it's all connected with these super long regional express lines. Many of these trips are also possible with high-speed rail if you want to go even faster, but at the cost of a higher fare and a more convoluted booking process, and of course, airport-style security at the stations. Just take the regional train if you can. The first of these is the R11, running from Barcelona Sants through Girona and up to Figueres, on a trip that's about an hour faster than the local R1 and RG1, with most services reaching Portbou, that's only a kilometer away from France. Just like the two that we saw earlier, you can get on SNCF regional trains here that use standard gauge. The R11 is 172 kilometers long. Next up is the R14, starting at França station in Barcelona, which itself is a stub-end terminus for lots of regional trains. It then makes the over 3-hour trip 6 times a day to Lleida via Tarragona and Reus. There's also the R13, a related service to the R14 that travels on a shorter distance between Sant Vicenç and La Plana. In fact, the R13 trains actually have a timed transfer to R14 trains, which I think is a really nice touch. And now, get ready for the R15. Similar to the R14, but turning back to... Okay, this is going to be a tough one. Riba oh my god. Riba Zebre. Oh my god, that sucked. Anyway, let's keep going, because here is where the most cursed part of Rodalies begins. Renfe runs regional express trains all across the country, of course, and many of them cross over the autonomous community lines. The ones in Catalonia will often go outside of it, some all the way to Zaragoza and even Madrid, sometimes branded as medium-distance trains. However, because they use the same route as the R15 while in Catalonia and appear in the R15 schedules, I've heard that sometimes the train is signed as an R15. So yes, you can technically take a train that is signed as a Catalan regional train to Madrid on the legacy Iberian gauge railways. It'll take you the best part of 8 hours, but it's possible. Who needs high-speed rail? I mean, look at the scenery. You gotta appreciate it moving past you slowly. But yeah, shout out the R15 to Madrid. Apparently. I don't know, I didn't go ride it. Similarly with R16, a couple trains on that line continue south past Tortosa to Valencia, and get treated with Renfe's medium-distance branding. Tortosa is actually a branch of the line, so to serve that station, trains have to go in and back out again. And finally, the very last service is the R17, which is just a shorter R16 with one extra stop. And look, it's bright orange, just like the Rodalies logo. They're running out of colors here, aren't they? And there we go, 21 lines later, we have looked at every Rodalies de Catalunya service. Over 600 kilometers of track, over 200 stations, moving 100 million people a year. What could possibly go wrong? Well, at long last, it's time to address the elephant in the room. Rodalies is a mess, quite frankly. Delays across the network are super common, which is bad enough as it is, but when very few trains actually run across the entirety of a line, you need to read the train screens very carefully to know what train you're about to get on. The system suffers from chronic underfunding and a lack of interest from local governments, which is reflected in rolling stock not being of the best quality. The Renfe finally appear to be getting some new sets for Rodalies and their other similar cercanías suburban rail services across the country. Many of the central stations in Barcelona are quite cramped, and level boarding seems to be scarce, all traces of the legacy infrastructure that has allowed Rodalies to become what it is today. It's kind of like the London Overground approach: take a bunch of old legacy lines and rebrand them, giving them a facelift, but Rodalies kinda skipped the facelift part. When the infrastructure is not maintained, slow zones and service closures are almost an inevitability. Many of the lines also have rather low top speeds, which struggles to make those services competitive with driving. And this seems like an issue not just on Catalonia's regional rail, but on all other cercanías networks in Spain. And the data speaks for itself. Across all of 2023, Spain only saw 13.8 rail trips per capita, which is a lower figure than places like Norway, Finland, Portugal, and Czechia. Italy is also similarly lacking in this metric. And look, you can have the fanciest high-speed trains in the world, but if your regional rail isn't up to scratch, then no one's choosing that over their cars. Having that good regional rail is the backbone for any successful transit metropolis. All of that said, the Rodalies remains a key part of Barcelona's transit system. It's connected to the metro in many central places, and for shorter trips it can be quite quick, especially on the interline sections. It has 2 city center tunnels, and a third one under the diagonals being discussed. It has an airport link, and it goes to an awful lot of places. Barcelona absolutely deserves to have a high-capacity regional rail system on par with the Paris-RER or the very best S-Bahn systems in German-speaking countries. So it does often make me wonder what could be with just a little bit more care and well-planned improvements. Well, if I wasn't the master of jinxing things, quite a big bombshell dropped while I was editing this video, in that Rodalies is looking to reform. It was announced that a new company is planned to be created, which will still be majority owned by Renfe, just about, though the government of Catalonia will control the board of directors. And I'm hoping that does actually lead to tangible change on the network, because boy do they need it. But yeah, that's it, the Rodalies video, finally. I've been putting this one off for a long time, thinking about how I'm gonna make it good, you know, do I talk about it every single service? I mean, I did. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and we're almost on the Barcelona series, 2 more videos, get excited. One of them will be involving high-speed trains, and one more will be involving trams. You guys love trams, right?